Chi Minh, Ho Chi Minh, Ho Chi Minh, Ho Chi Minh. Miền miền xa, người đi khắp phương trời, ở nơi xa đó người dân đói nghèo, từ đau thương người đi khắp năm châu lòng tin mặt trời chân lý sáng soi, dõi chiếu sáng dân mình. Ho Chi Minh, Ho Chi Minh, Ho Chi Minh.
This is Ho Chi Minh Thought, Part 2. And today we're going to be looking at Ho Chi Minh, or Uncle Ho's document or writing, specifically, oppression hits all races. This was first published by Paria on August 17, 1923. And the online version was published in 2003, which is very good, so that people who don't have access to the physical copy can find an online copy easily accessible to anyone at any time, wherever anyone is. Now, here is Oppression Hits All Races by Ho Chi Minh, or Uncle Ho. Vorovsky, delegate of the workers' and peasants' Russia, was murdered in Switzerland by fascism. There was not one of the delegates of the very civilized and very Christian powers gathered at Lausanne who deigned to attend his funeral. Only the Turkish delegation, headed by Ismet Pasha, came to pay tribute to the mortal remains of the murdered man. Ben Radia, a worker of Tunisian origin, was murdered on May Day by the police. The Parisian workers' organizations gave him a big funeral. Thousands of workers stopped work on that day to follow their native comrade to his last resting place. All the martyrs of the working class, those in Lausanne like those in Paris, those in Le Havre like those in Martinique, are victims of the same murderer, international capitalism. And it is always in belief in the liberation of their oppressed brothers, without discrimination as to race or country, that the souls of these martyrs will find supreme consolation. After experiencing these painful lessons, the oppressed people of all countries ought to know on which side their true brothers are, and on which side their enemy. This is a very big last. This is a very important saying from Uncle Ho, or Ho Chi Minh here. One of the most important sayings of his, as well as this piece of writing. Now, if we look into fascism, we know that fascism is a tyrannical kind of ideology in which it is extreme in their practices. For example, we could take that of Adolf Hitler, who practiced the eliminating of people who are simply of a certain sexual preference, like homosexuality, or someone who is of a different origin, ethnic origin, such as that of African American, and especially that of religious or ethno-religious identity, such as that of being a Jew or Jewish. Fascism is an extremely dangerous ideology in which it destroys or targets a certain group of people and destroys them entirely simply because of their identity, their religious belief, or their sexual orientation. But when it comes to other ideologies, such as that of international capitalism, it is also an ideology that would put certain people in economic inequality. So people who do one job end up getting paid more versus someone else on this side who may not get paid as much. So we could say for here, Uncle Ho here in regard to two ideologies. The first being fascism. And it's good to pull out this here. So this is the first here. Fascism. And what is fascism in its exact definition here? So, often fascism, a populist political philosophy, movement, or regime, such as that of the fascisti, that exalts nation and often race. This is one key factor here, often race. Like I said, this goes back all the way to Hitler. We can pull him out here. This is a perfect picture to put. I hope this doesn't get desensitized because this is just an educational video. So nobody's glorifying anything here, okay? Please, mods, I'd have to write a statement if ever they took down this video, but whatever. I'll handle that. That exalts nation and often race. So I'll put a red dot for fascism. Or yeah, I'll do a red dot here. And then I'll just do it here so you could see this is the example of fascism right there. So, fascism. All right. Let's read that. Let's read this again. Often fascism, a populist political philosophy, movement, or regime such as that of the fascisti, that exalts a nation, exalts nation and often race above the individual, that is associated with a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, and that is characterized by severe economic and social regimentation and by forcible suppression of opposition. And so fascism is Adolf Hitler's just that perfect example of what fascism is. He literally is the perfect example of what fascism is. And so Vorovsky, delegate of the workers as peasants as Russia, was murdered in Switzerland by fascism. There was not one of the delegates of the very civilized and very Christian powers gathered in Lausanne who deigned to attend his funeral. Only the Turkish delegation, headed by Ismet Pasha, came to pay tribute to the mortal remains of the murdered man. Ben Radia, a worker of Tunisian origin, was murdered on May Day by the police. The Parisian workers' organizations gave him a big funeral. Thousands of workers stopped work on that day to follow their native comrade to his last resting place. All the martyrs of the working class, those in Lausanne, like those in Paris, those in Le Havre, like those in Martinique, are victims of the same murderer, international capitalism. And it is always in belief in the liberation of their oppressed brothers, without discrimination as to race or country, that the souls of these martyrs will find supreme consolation. After experiencing these painful lessons, the oppressed people of all countries ought to know on which side their true brothers are, and on which side their enemy. So, the oppressed people of all countries ought to know on which side their true brothers are, and on which side their enemy. So for the proletariat, or for the communist, or let's say you're not a communist, but everybody is, or just in regard to people who are part of the working class, people who are part of the working class and don't get paid enough just to survive, to eat and drink, such as food or water. You can't even survive your most basic needs. You being one person, especially your family. And this occurs in many countries around the world, especially that in Southeast Asia. It's especially a perfect place to look into this as to how can we see this that this last saying here, actually this section here, this last, really the last saying of the second, you could say the second last and the third last saying of oppression hits all races by Ho Chi Minh. Give me a second, someone is calling. Really the second to third of the last section of Oppression Hits All Races by Uncle Ho or Ho Chi Minh is quite the biggest thing here, and or the biggest saying you could say of this piece of writing. And oppressed people, people who are of the working class, the proletariat who can't afford the very basic necessities of life, such as that of food, drink, maybe even just cleaning stuff. But let's say you have clothes, or let's say, but then you have to pay rent on top of that. You have to pay rent. You have to do all these other things that you can't even do because because of the work that you have is pays you very little. Then you'd be under this oppressed people here. And especially for Uncle Ho, he would definitely say being oppressed would be that under some kind of colonialism, since Uncle Ho's country, Vietnam, was under French colonialism, or under France, under their colonialism. And colonialism is most essential to Ho Chi Minh thought. And and we look at colonialism, we see that it is the definition goes by domination of a people or area by a foreign state or nation, the practice of extending and maintaining a nation's political and economic control over another people or area. And so, reading the definition one more time, colonialism is domination of a people or area by a foreign state or nation, the practice of extending and maintaining a nation's political and economic control over another people or area. And so, Ho Chi Minh, and so colonialism is one of the biggest foundations of Ho Chi Minh thought. And as I've said, because Vietnam was under France, and so we have this very helpful, useful search assistant from DuckDuckGo. And when we check out the encyclopedia as well, we see The Conquest of Vietnam by France, or French colonization, Indochina unification. The, the decision to invade Vietnam was made by Napoleon III in July 1857. It was the result not only of missionary propaganda, but also, after 1850, of the upsurge of French capitalism, which generated the need for overseas markets. And also here's a good illustration as well here too. So we have here, China's over here, Laos is here, Southeast Asia, we're going down to Southeast Asia, Thailand is here, Cambodia is here. And so Vietnam is right here. So we see French Indochina. France is all over Southeast Asia at this time. Their colonialism. Vietnam was under French colonial rule from the late 19th century until the mid 20th century, beginning with the invasion of 1858. This period saw significant changes in Vietnamese society, including the introduction of Western education, the spread of Roman Catholicism, and the establishment of a plantation economy focused on exports like tobacco and coffee, which led to growing nationalist movements against colonial rule. So we could even bring this image here. Then put this here. We'll do yellow for colonialism. It's quite a bright yellow. Perhaps we could tone it down a bit. And so colonialism here. So fascism, a dangerous ideology. And I believe if we go to the fascisti, or look at the fascisti, from my knowledge of history, Mussolini, is as far as I think. As we see, such as that of the fascisti, Mussolini is another perfect example of fascism as well. And for some reason, Mussolini reminds me of some kind of Roman thing, Roman kind of pride, like this pride of of being Italian, but except back then in Rome, since Rome was a very powerful place in ancient history or in history. So to emphasize one more time, it is important to understand one of the foundations of Ho Chi Minh thought is colonialism. And in response to colonialism, Ho Chi Minh really brings about these things here. Anti-imperialism, as well as anti-colonialism. Anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. So this is, we could say, Ho Chi Minh or Uncle Ho's response Uncle Ho's response to colonialism. Anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism. Or instead, we could just make it a different red, since this red is very fascist. It's kind of so that way you don't get confused with that. Anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism. So foundation. So the foundation, or one of the foundations of Ho Chi Minh thought, is this: is colonialism, and the response to colonialism, the counter to colonialism of the essence of Ho Chi Minh thought is anti-imperialism or anti-colonialism, in which the Marxist, Leninist, or the proletariat, the workers, decide to overthrow, to wage a revolution against colonial rule. And so Karl Marx said something about colonialism here, in which he said, colonial system, public debts, heavy taxes, protection, commercial wars, etc. These offshoots of the period of manufacture swelled to gigantic proportions during the period of infancy of large-scale industry. The birth of the latter is celebrated by a vast, hero-like slaughter of the innocents. Karl Marx was a critical observer of colonialism, arguing that it played a significant role in the process of capital accumulation and exploitation. He believed that colonial practices were not just a prehistory of capitalism, but integral to its development, highlighting the negative impacts on colonized societies and the interconnectedness of global labor conditions. And here is Marx on Colonialism as well by Edgar Hardcastle. This is an also interesting read as well too. But nonetheless, Karl Marx was a huge critic in regard in regard to colonialism. So, Borowski, murdered by fascism, okay, and a couple of other Marxist comrades as well, too, have been killed. And so, international capitalism is another one as well. International capitalism refers to an economic system where production, trade, and investment occur on a global scale, often driven by multinational corporations and international markets. It highlights the interconnectedness of economies and the impact of global trade on local markets and societies. I wonder if it would show here with the search assistant. That way we could get a very specific answer. Perfect, okay. Ho Chi Minh criticized international capitalism for its exploitation of workers and resources, viewing it as a system that perpetuates inequality and social injustices. He believed that capitalism's focus on profit often leads to environmental degradation and undermines the sovereignty of nations, which would relate back to here. All the martyrs of the working class, those in Lausanne like those in Paris, those in Le Havre like those in Martinique, are victims of the same murderer, international capitalism. And it is always in belief in the liberation of their oppressed brothers, without discrimination as to race or country. This is a very important thing, that Marxism, Leninism is an ideology that has no discrimination, whether you are a black person from Africa or a white person from Europe or a Chinese person from China or a Vietnamese person from Vietnam, whether you're Asian, black or white. Marxism, Leninism has no boundaries to race. It only focuses on the people and the liberation of people from oppression, whether it be economic oppression or colonial oppression. And so it is anti-fascist and it is anti-colonial. Marxism is anti-fascist and anti-colonial. And Marxism, Leninism, the more it is anti-fascist and anti-colonial. That the souls of these martyrs will find supreme consolation. After experiencing these painful lessons, the oppressed people of all countries ought to know on which side their true brothers are and on which side their enemy. So it is quite clear that Uncle Ho wants us to know that those who are of the oppressed people, all countries, and back then for him in his context it was Vietnam under French colonial rule, as we see here. As we see in this picture here. Today, as to how we could see it in other countries today, Ho Chi Minh Thought is still as relevant. Marxism, Leninism is still as relevant, though it is a classic ideology, and most specifically Ho Chi Minh Thought, because there are many peoples that are oppressed. I can name various countries of this sort. So I'll name a couple countries. Okay, the Philippines is one of them in Southeast Asia. People work there, but they can't make enough to have their basic needs met. So you have to you have to truly survive. The Maldives is another example of oppression, when it comes to religious oppression. And it is imperialistic in its nature because it is ruled by Islam. You can't be a Maldivian citizen unless what? You're a Muslim. So that oppression of being under a certain religious institution is another form of oppression where you can't, where women don't have rights. Women can't do certain things in the Maldives. As beautiful as the islands of the Maldives are, they are limited. They don't have rights, which is an incredible thing to analyze. Maldives is so beautiful, isn't it? Isn't it not? Incredibly beautiful place. But when you go downtown to the cities, the streets here in Malé, yeah, it's ruled under Muslim rule. It was once a Buddhist place, by the way. It was once ruled. It was many people in the Maldives were Buddhists a long time ago, but then the Muslims came, and then a lot of them forced the Buddhists to convert. So people were forced to become Muslim as well as by trade too, or as well as not by non-violent means and as well as violent means. So as beautiful as the islands of the Maldives are, it is under Islam, under the religion of Islam. The flag of the Maldives features a green rectangle in the center of a red field with a white crescent facing the fly side. It was adopted on July 25, 1965, and symbolizes the blood of national heroes, peace, and Islam, the state religion. It seems that this word peace is quite a relevant term. Perhaps it means to only certain people and not to all people. So I just find it very interesting how that is, and interesting how it symbolizes the blood of national heroes, the red. But nonetheless, Maldives is one country. Well, another country under colonial rule is Puerto Rico, you could say, under U.S. colonialism. So these are countries as to how we can relate to countries today that are relatable. So Philippines, of course, another country, beautiful islands, right? But there's tons of poverty, especially in the south. So after experiencing these painful lessons, the oppressed people of all countries ought to know on which side their true brothers are, and on which side their enemy. The oppressed people of all countries ought to know on which side their true brothers are. So who are the true brothers to those to the working people who are oppressed? The proletariat. Those who truly understand Marxism, Leninism. Those who truly understand the ideas of Karl Marx, those who truly understand the ideas of Vladimir Lenin, those who truly understand the ideas. Well, the very foundation is Karl Marx, Marxism. So those who truly understand the very foundation of Marxism, those who abide by them, those who are for the ideas of Karl Marx, for the benefit of all people, not just oneself, but for the benefit of everybody. That's the beauty of communism, or the beauty of socialism, is that it is not just for you, but it is also for the person that you'll come across, that you'll walk by in the middle of the street, knowing that person perhaps is struggling economically too. Maybe you're struggling economically, or maybe you're not struggling economically, but the person you pass by may be struggling economically. But you have this tool, and what is the tool? The tool is an idea. And as Thomas Sankara said, you can kill revolutionaries, but you cannot kill ideas. ideas will live forever. That is why it is often said that the pen is more dangerous than the sword, because the pen lasts for generations and thousands of years. This is the beauty of history. We're able to understand thousands of years of the past because of people writing stuff down, aside from oral tradition or talking, that is. And so Thomas Sankara, he was president of Burkina Faso. Revolutionaries as individuals can be murdered. You cannot kill ideas. This is a very important thing to understand, that revolutionaries can be killed, but you can't kill ideas. You cannot kill ideas. You cannot kill ideas. Thomas Sankara's tribute to Che Guevara. Faith in the struggle for change, in the struggle against imperialism and against capitalism. And so this is the beauty of communism and socialism, is that it is about equality. It's not about inequality, it's about equality. It's about the best for all people, not just for the best for you, but the best for all people. That's the beauty of communism, the beauty of socialism, the beauty of, in this entire series, most specifically, the beauty of Ho Chi Minh Thought is that we really get to see the experiential thing. That what I love about this is that it is experiential. You're able to see colonialism be at play here when it comes to to Vietnam here. We're able to see it from history. And so, and we're able to see Marxism, Leninism being applied in Vietnam. And so we see that Uncle Ho's response to colonialism is anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. So waging revolution against the oppressors, thus liberating yourself. And so when you do that, wage revolution, anyway, it's better this way. When you're able to wage a successful revolution, and you're able to, then you have the liberation, and you're able to come to when you wage a revolution, that it's with all of the people, you're able to come to to victory, is what I'm trying to get at here. Is that when you wage a revolution, there will be victory if you continue in it. Other photos of Uncle Ho here. For generations of Vietnamese people, President Ho Chi Minh, Uncle Ho, is always a close, dear, and respectable figure. And because he cared about the liberation of his people, he cared about this. He wanted some change to happen under this French colonial power here. He wanted this, he wanted change. He wanted change to happen. He wanted change to happen. And so it did happen. It did. But a very important thing to know here is this, that the oppressed people of all countries ought to know on which side their true brothers are and on which side their enemy. That the people who are in whatever country that they may be in, those people in those countries who are oppressed ought to know on which side their true brothers are and on which side their enemy. Who is the enemy here? And who are the brothers? The brothers are your fellow proletarians, those who are aligned with the ideas of Karl Marx, at least that being the foundation. Because when you align your ideology with Vladimir Lenin and with, let's say, Mao Zedong, or let's say Ho Chi Minh, you automatically align yourself with the ideas of Karl Marx, automatically. Because that is the very foundation. Karl Marx is the very foundation for all of this. So those who are the true brothers are those who are Marxists, or Leninists, or Maoists, or people who follow Ho Chi Minh's thought as well too. People who care about the liberation of their fellow human beings, their fellow working people, working class people, or just people who align themselves with Marxism, okay, whether they're working class or not. Whether you're an aristocrat or you're a working person, your true brothers are those who align themselves with the teachings of Karl Marx, or the teachings of Vladimir Lenin, or the teachings of Mao Zedong, or the teachings of Ho Chi Minh. Those are your true brothers, whether they're aristocrats currently or working class people currently. Those people who align themselves with their teachings are your true brothers, because they will wage revolutions for you, because they have the teaching of those people, most specifically the foundation, Karl Marx. And so, who is the enemy here? Well, international capitalism and colonialism. Colonialism and fascism. People who put race first, or ethnicity first, or people who or not so much first, but more so that you put it above everything else, that being black is being better than white, or being Asian is better than being white, or being this race is better than this, or speaking this language is better than that. You have to understand that this is a part here which is very important here in regard to that. And it is always in belief in the liberation of their oppressed brothers. This is the most important part here in regard to what I'm saying right now, without discrimination as to race or country. Okay. Thomas Sankara, black. Vladimir Lenin, Slavic, Russian, Eastern European. Marx, Western European. Che Guevara, Argentinian. though he helped liberate Cuba from the previous rule. You see the diversity when it comes to communism, Marxism, socialism. It is a diverse thing. It is not a one race thing or a one language thing. It is a majority. It is for everyone, for every single person across the entire world. Okay, without discrimination as to race or country. So Ho Chi Minh thought is the foundations of Ho Chi Minh thought would be anti-fascism, anti-colonialism, as well as abiding by the foundations of Karl Marx, which are no discrimination as to race or country when it comes to liberating oppressed peoples of of all countries. And so people who are oppressed ought to know which side their true brothers are and which side the enemy is. Those who abide, true brothers are those who abide by the teachings of Karl Marx as well as other people too, Vladimir Lenin. And like I said, if you abide by Vladimir Lenin's teachings, you automatically abide by Karl Marx's teachings because Karl Marx is the very foundation to which everything else branches off. And the enemy is who? Fascism, international capitalism, and colonialism. And you could also say that the Khmer Rouge or Cambodia were really fascist. They were never they you could say they were fake communists because they were not communists at all. They killed people if you were just Chinese, they'd kill you. If you wore glasses, they'd kill you. It's like they want a pure Cambodian kind of thing, and it's fascist. It's not communist at all whatsoever. So very important thing to point out there. Though they have good music, nonetheless, good music. But Khmer Rouge are fake communists, just so you guys know. And so, who liberated Cambodia from the fake communists? From Pol Pot. Uncle Ho did. Uncle Ho did. Uncle Ho did. Uncle Ho did. Anti-imperialism. Imperialism in any sense, whether it's fascist or economic or religious. Alright, you understand. So anyway, we should know who the brothers are and who the enemies are, as well as specifically those enemies and specifically those things, and to know that, look, it doesn't matter if you're black or Latino or Western European or Eastern European. It's everyone struggles the same. We're all human at the end, and we all struggle with some kind of economic hardship in which it can be freed if we pick up the tools and do something about it. It is as simple as that. If we don't do anything about it, it's just going to be as it is until someone does something. And the more the majority of people do something, then the 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 more the results are going to come about. Like how Vietnam, like how Uncle Ho did it with with Vietnam, with France. He liberated Vietnam. Okay. And so other countries are a perfect example of that. Vladimir Lenin, okay, did that to Russia, then they became the USSR. Thomas Sankara with that of Burkina Faso. Che Guevara, in which actually this is a very interesting one, is that with Che, he did it with only there were not he had there were support of the people, but it was so much it was so much less than a normal revolution. So Che Guevara tactics, revolutionary tactics, is different from a normal sized revolution, in which it shows you that Che Guevara tactics do work. They do work for a revolution to bring about a socialist or communist society. So very interesting to note that. But nonetheless, no discrimination as to race or country, and you ought to know who your true brothers are and on who your enemy is in regard to Ho Chi Minh. And this is all in regard to Ho Chi Minh Thought. This is all in relation to Ho Chi Minh Thought. Everything in relation to Ho Chi Minh Thought. So, I'll upload this here. And if you want the notes, then you can feel free to download it for yourself, and the link is right here. And you'll be able to access it right here. All right. This is Ho Chi Minh Thought Part 2. I'll see you guys in other videos to come.
vượt trùng sông, người đi khắp phương trời, luyện tôi ý chí, lòng nuối căm hờn. Hồ Chí Minh người đi khắp năm châu, lòng tin mặt trời chân lý sáng soi, dọi chiều sáng dân mình. Hồ Chí Minh, Hồ Chí Minh.